Welcome back, and thank you very much for staying with us right here on The Nation ASEAN Plus. Today we dive into a pivotal moment for Malaysia as she prepares to assume the ASEAN chair in 2025. Now, the Penang Institute has put forth a series of innovative recommendations that Malaysia should consider raising in order to accelerate integrational dynamics of the regional organization, better known as ASEAN to You and Me. Joining me virtually from Penang is Dr. BENG, Executive Director of the Penang Institute, to discuss, not talk about the proposals, but at least give us a checklist of what he thinks needs to be done as Malaysia takes on the chairmanship of ASEAN. Dato', thank you very much for taking time off to be with us. We always love that you make it into the studio, but it's really tough for you to be here, but we hope at some point we can have a longer discussion. But for now, Malaysia takes on the chair. There's many conversations happening as we move into the chairmanship. We've already taken on the mantle. Now it's time to start executing the work. So in your head, when you approximate this, what are the few things that come to mind that we need to be cognizant about as we take on the chairmanship of ASEAN?
Well, I think actually it's a very exciting time for the country and the region. And I, for one, is excited that the timing is so good that Malaysia is actually going to be holding the chair next year under Anwar Ibrahim. I think ASEAN is entering a period where it cannot continue being the way it used to be. Partly because we've reached a new era and the geopolitical situation in the world has changed a lot, even in the region, right? And so there are a lot of opportunities. We saw some of these opportunities in Malaysia when it became clear that our electronics industry, for example, largely based in Penang, has become so important to the rest of the world and also as a player on the geopolitical arena. That tells me that certain things we did were right, but that also showed us certain things that we did that were not as well done. So we are at that kind of age. So when it comes to ASEAN itself and what Malaysia can bring to the table next year, I think we need to be bold. We need to be bolder than ever before because it's a new world. And I think the present atmosphere is quite right. Malaysia has asked to be a member of BRICS. It does show that there's a change in our thinking in response to the fact that the world is actually changing a lot. So here I would say that we should be talking about region building, the region being ASEAN itself, and what should we look at today in a more ambitious way than we have ever done before. I think we have to look at infrastructure, for one thing. If we are going to have greater integration in ASEAN, we have to look at the digital network. We have to have a more inclusive cyber connection throughout the region, mainly to bring down the development gap between our countries, which always leads to a lot of problems in how ASEAN is to act. That's one thing. So even education, I think we have to invest in synergy so that we can help each other, all the member states of ASEAN. One other thing that I find important as a political scientist, I suppose, is the fact that most of ASEAN is actually sea. We are actually an archipelagic region, and therefore, as part of our decolonization, we have to look at ourselves as maritime. And that means if it comes to environmental issues or even economic issues, even security issues, we have to look at the sea. We have to look at how we can best make use of our seas, how best we can preserve the seas. So I would think, say, maritime sanctuaries being something that we should push for throughout the whole region would be one way of looking at it. So I think in that's one line of thinking we need to take, a broad one, and then we try to work our way down to more concrete measures that can help in the long-term integration of ASEAN itself.
Right. It's interesting you talk about, you mentioned quite a few things here, but one thing that stands out to me is with ASEAN now, I guess there needs to be buy-in from the people of ASEAN, for it to be, for a lot of things, like you said, when you talk about ASEAN being a maritime, we're a maritime bloc. There's just a lot happening, and we need to take care of our seas. Having said that, we need the buy-in from people. Now, the thing that stands out to me like a sore thumb is the fact that there's this disparity between the have and the have-not. So if you take a country like Singapore and another ASEAN country which is not doing too well, you see a big gap. Now, would taking on the chair also mean addressing issues of this nature? Of course, there's going to be a lot of talk about the South China Sea and Myanmar next year, but that aside, for people to have buy-in, or for the different communities within ASEAN to have a buy-in, there must be, food should be able to put on everyone's table. Everyone should get a slice of the pie, so to speak. Your thoughts?
I think the ASEAN agenda should shift towards being more developmental, more than just merely integrational, which I think that is the main structure of ASEAN at the moment. You integrate in sociocultural, security, and so on and so forth. I think the shift should be towards developmental issues, and that's why I mentioned the digital sector. I think the digital is what holds the greatest promise for latecomers, right? So for the poorer countries, I think if ASEAN could play its role at having developmental projects that can build up infrastructure in the form of digital networks, for example, educational networks, and where the people are concerned, I think we have to start looking at the SMEs. Our integration, I think, has to happen very much with the participation of SMEs in all these countries. As we know, the economic culture of most ASEAN countries, to some extent even Singapore, is SME-based. But our economic agendas and discussions tend to be about what's in it for the MNCs, how should we attract the MNCs, and so on and so forth. When perhaps it's the SMEs and the collaboration across borders between ASEAN SMEs that should be something we look at. We talk about ASEAN as a market, but we don't do that at the SME level enough. And now we're in an era of FTAs, aren't we? We now have RCEP in place and so on. So we have the infrastructure, we have the thinking, we have the words. We should now push for that synergy to actually take place. And that could be part of Malaysia's role next year. We could take on the leadership role that ASEAN has been missing for quite a while.
Mm-hmm. Now taking on the leadership role, I've got about a minute and a half before I let you go, Dato'. Time has run really quickly. But with Malaysia taking on the chairmanship next year, what would be your call to the Prime Minister of Malaysia or to those in the cabinet and also member states of ASEAN with regards to what we need to do moving forward? What would be that one word of advice you'd like to give them?
Well, the long-term suggestion I would make is what I said, that we have to push for a more developmental attitude towards how ASEAN should grow. But also we need to have common goals. One way I'm thinking that, and one thing suggested by my researchers, is for Malaysia or for ASEAN, for Malaysia to push for ASEAN to bid for the 2040 Olympics. Now that sounds like a huge ambition, but even if you don't succeed, but the attempt itself at doing something so grand and something so ambitious and something that could help make ASEAN thinking more obvious. It could raise ASEAN consciousness among the people quite a lot if the discussion could go into how ASEAN can actually run the Olympics, and if we can't, why we can't. That line of discussion would very much be in line with the developmental agenda that I think ASEAN should go into. Right.
So a developmental mindset, and we need to look at the developmental agenda. That's what you're saying. We'd like to expound on this a lot more. We'd like to talk to you about this a lot more, but we hope we have time at some point in the future to get you here in the studio to talk about what's happening in ASEAN. Dato Dr. Ooi, it was a pleasure and an honor speaking to you. We hope to have you back again. I'm about to take another break. When we come back, we'll give you more as to what's happening in ASEAN through the nation ASEAN Plus. We'll talk about stories in ASEAN this week.